Well, the government shutdown ended last night, as we told you, when President Trump, he signed a continuing resolution to reopen the government. But it's just another short-term deal here. The federal government now has the money to keep running through February 8th. But that means the clock ticking once again, and lawmakers have just 16 more days to settle their real differences or face yet another possible shutdown. And today, with the shutdown over, the focus on Washington has shifted to the blame game, and there's plenty to go around as lawmakers and the president struggle to iron out an elusive deal on DACA, border wall, and more. Now, for the latest, let's bring our senior political correspondent, Andrew Whitman. There's a lot of things that got to get done in a very short period of time.
They do, Rich, and right now everybody seems to be focused, as you said, on the blame game. There are really two blame games at work in D.C. right now, what lawmakers are saying about one another and what the public is saying. As you might expect, the three top figures are having at it, with President Trump, Mitch McConnell, and their colleagues all blaming Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer for the shutdown, while Schumer and other Democrats continue to blame Trump and McConnell. As for the public, there's a growing blame both sides sense. A new NBC News online poll puts most of the blame evenly on congressional Democrats and President Trump, though when you add in blame for congressional Republicans, the public still appears to be siding with Democrats, though the numbers are a little bit tighter than what we saw before the shutdown. One change we're seeing since the shutdown ended, President Trump, he stayed mostly out of sight during the two-day-plus closure, but now he's back and seems to be somewhat emboldened. He's sure is on Twitter, tweeting last night, "Big win for Republicans as Democrats cave on shutdown. Now I want a big win for everyone, including Republicans, Democrats, and DACA, but especially for our great military and border security. Should be able to get there. See you at the negotiating table." He followed that up this morning with, "Nobody knows for sure that the Democrats and Republicans will be able to reach a deal on DACA by February 8th, but everyone will be trying, with a big additional focus put on military strength and border security. The Dems have just learned that a shutdown is not the answer." If that Trump tweet made a deal by February 8th sound less likely, you may be right, and Trump's not alone, especially when it comes to funding for Trump's border wall. Chuck Schumer today took border wall funding off the table for future negotiations with the White House. The Democratic leader had offered more than $1.5 billion in wall funding before the shutdown, the first year's request for wall funding. This after White House Budget Director Mick Mulvaney said during the shutdown that Schumer only agreed to authorize wall money, not actually appropriate it, and he put the price tag for the wall at about $20 billion, far more than what Schumer was offering. Another worry for Schumer coming out of the shutdown, blowback from unhappy progressives. Many, including immigration and DACA activists, have been blasting Schumer, accusing him of failing to fight and failing to use his leverage to protect young immigrants. They've taken to Twitter using the hashtag #SumerSellout. Of course, with negotiations continuing, lots of questions remain about which positions the president will take on the two key issues at the center of the dispute. Trump has certainly flip-flopped on the border wall, a key plank of his election campaign, going from wall to virtual wall to border security and back. Even White House Chief of Staff John Kelly told both lawmakers and the press that Trump's position on the wall had evolved since the campaign, something Trump personally pushed back on, leading to rumors that Kelly would soon be replaced. Trump's biggest reversal on the wall is, of course, on who pays for it. Time and time again, he said during the campaign that Mexico would pay for the wall, but as president, all of his wall proposals have had American taxpayers footing the bill instead. But the more visible Trump flip-flops have come on DACA, or protection for the 700,000 Dreamers who came to the U.S. as children. Trump has alternatively said he and everyone wants them to be protected. He also said, as president, he wants a sympathetic solution. Then again, he's also the one who issued the executive order putting them at the risk of deportation. And in the bipartisan meeting at the White House last week, the one where he began negotiations in front of TV cameras, Trump took both sides, saying he was open to a clean bill on DACA before a top House Republican reminded him that he was actually against that. Complicating the president's complicated positions on DACA, the fact that even during and after the shutdown, Americans support letting Dreamers stay in the U.S. by a 2-to-1 margin. Rich?
So that's easy. We'll fix that. Let's bring in our panel right now. Vincent Velasco, he was a campaign manager for George Pataki's presidential bid and Joe Loda's campaign for New York City mayor. Giancarlo Parasuta, former aide to President George H.W. Bush, and Andrew Whitman, who you met, our senior political correspondent. All right, Vinny, at this point, do we know what Trump wants in the deal?
Well, I think it's less about what Trump wants and what can actually get through the House. I think there's a bipartisan nature in the Senate that'll work together. But
did that change? That what you answered, which is probably the right calculation, but did it change after what just happened 72 hours ago in that or in the last 72 hours, that now the Freedom Caucus is more emboldened?
More emboldened? Yes, I think they are absolutely more emboldened because they know at the end of the day they're going to be the ones that will put this through or not and block it. And you know, this is an issue that can play into the midterm elections. I'm surprised that Democrats would want to take it on so early in the year. But at the end of the day, I think it's going to be more about the Freedom Caucus than what Trump wants.
He stayed silent during the negotiations, and then took credit for the government reopening. That all said, can he stay quiet long enough in the next 2.5 weeks that if there is a deal, he won't blow it up?
No, because I think if they're going to push this through the Freedom Caucus, they're going to need Trump. So the Costanza strategy of doing the opposite of what he's been doing for the last year worked, I think, you know, and the overtures in the tweets today, I think, are working well. But they're going to need him over the next 2 weeks.
It works well, but Schumer, Andrew, and I think deservedly, got some heat for taking a stance without really a strategy. And it wasn't easy to navigate this, but I really think that Durbin and Graham thought they had a deal when they walked in the office with the president. And once that happened, everything was all over the place. But I said, you know, on Friday, I think the Democrats are misreading the messaging here. I think the Republicans have a simpler message to say Schumer's shutting the government down. And then their argument was, let's explain why we're doing that, and once you do that, it doesn't fit on a bumper sticker.
And there's certainly an image problem for Schumer and Senate Democrats right now. First of all, you know, they look a little weak just from a PR standpoint. Shut the government down on a Friday, and then all of a sudden you don't get a lot of concessions out of reopening the government on a Monday. You know, there are other concerns as well for him. He's got a similar problem to Paul Ryan in the House, where he's got to sort of herd cats a little bit on all of this. We have Democrats in the Senate who are looking to run for president and run to their left. You have other Democrats who are from more conservative states that Trump won, and they need to try to show some functionality and some sympathy to the people who want to take a tougher stance on immigration.
Not that Trump was ever going to do Schumer a favor, but when he said that Schumer caved, he's backing him in a corner right now that he's got to go to the mattresses on this thing.
Yeah, I mean, you could easily make the argument that this hardens Schumer's position and that Democrats sort of have to take a tougher stance this next go around, even though they run the risk of potentially shutting the government down twice over a 17-day period on the same issue.
You have a really unique perspective on this, Giancarlo, because I think people who have a short memory of history, Bush 43 stuck his neck out for immigration reform that was more ambitious than even Obama tried. And he came close, but he couldn't get it over the finish line. He couldn't get enough support with his own party. There are border states right now that I don't care how red they are, they know that this idea of not just the wall and some other things doesn't fly practically for what they want, and changing immigration altogether. And this is really complicated, and it doesn't work in sound bites.
That's exactly right. And I think all of this points back to a fundamental fact, which is almost irrespective of what you think of Donald Trump, every day we're reminded of the fact he's really bad at his job. He doesn't understand the fundamental powers that a president has naturally, the bully pulpit, negotiating tactics, etc. George W. Bush, for whom I worked, famously laid out a set of principles on a given issue. If it were tax reform, No Child Left Behind, Medicare reform, immigration, and said, I'm going to let Congress work out the details, but these are the things that I want. I'm going to communicate that I want them. I'm not saying that they're set in stone. Case in point would be school choice on No Child Left Behind, et cetera. But he laid out a set of principles. Everyone knew what they were, and he sat back and let the process work itself out. It seems like Donald Trump's doing the exact opposite of this. Now, Republicans got lucky, frankly, when it came to this last round. And I do think that the politics are in their favor. Schumer's kind of rescinding the offer of border funding, I think, was a big mistake, because ultimately Democrats will pay the price if the government shuts down. The polls don't show it yet, but they will.
Which is amazing, because historically, the party in power and the president in power always pays the price. But in this particular one, I'm not trying to say how smart I was, but I could see, in one sentence, I could say, Schumer shut it down. And then how do the Democrats respond to that, even if the polls show they're right about DACA and all the other things?
Here's what I think. Historically, Republicans have been the obstructionists who have shut down the government. And I think that a lot of the polling that we're seeing are almost lagging indicators, because the public just reflexively hears government shutdown and thinks Republicans responsible. But the juxtaposition between Democrats shutting the government down, if in fact that's what happens, because of DACA, because of illegal immigration, the juxtaposition between illegal immigrants and men and women in service to our country not getting services, not getting paid, not getting better, it is a loser for Democrats. Period. Full stop.
That's an overly broad brush on this particular argument, just because I think the public recognizes a difference between illegal immigrants and DACA
I don't know if they do,
members.
Andrew.
No, I mean these are kids who are brought to the country, and we see the numbers.
Four of us know that at the table?
No, but it's 2 to 1 in terms of
I'll tell you
support
what,
for
if I was
DACA.
Schumer, I would have done. I would have said, okay, we're going to keep the government open until the March date, Vinny, where DACA ended. Because, again, I think in a visual medium, that's what we're looking at TV right now. If all of a sudden in March, you're showing on the nightly news that the government's shutting off its lights and people are escorting kids, deporting them, breaking them up from their families, then the public says, whoa, 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 I didn't sign up for that. Right. Now, all of a sudden, 16 days from now, right, we're in February, they don't see what DACA means and everything else. They say, another shutdown? What are you doing? Right. Get somebody other than Schumer here to run the show here. This is ridiculous. Well, to me, I still don't think he's figured out the math.
No, but the optics of mass deportation is much worse than, the national parks being closed.
Yep. That's my point. So let's go around the table really quick. How does this end? What happens in 16 days?
I think we're going to see more.
And who's winning the Super Bowl? What's the spread? No.
Pat, more of the same. I think that's an easier question. More of the same. To come up with a comprehensive immigration bill in 2 weeks is just nonsensical.
Do you think it's going to happen?
No.
You think there's another CR, or you think we have another shutdown?
I think there'll be another CR. There probably won't be another shutdown. And I think McConnell, boy, I really am being a babe in the woods here. I think McConnell keeps his word and gives them a clean debate on DACA itself, and it doesn't get out of the Senate.
Interesting. I think they win, John Culler, if Republicans get DACA out of the way. What do you think happens? They shut it down again?
No, I mean, if they do, I think both sides pay attention to the politics and someone blinks first. I mean, we're having a debate about which is going to hurt worse, a government shutdown or
right.
Caving on DACA, however you want to put it. I think if both sides come to brinksmanship, then the government shuts down and we wait to see, and then someone will blink first.
What a sad indictment on where we are.
The wild card in all this being the president and how far afield he goes.
Yep.
And if you get another incident like that meeting that we had at the White House a couple of weeks ago and headlines come out of it, he could tilt the balance
Kelly's
in all likelihood towards
Kelly's got to steal his phone. He's got to steal his phone so he can't tweet in the middle of the night. And as facetious as that sounds, I'm not even kidding. All right, we'll come back to actually in the political year where we are for midterms here and could there be a wave. But up next, closer to home, we are live at the federal courthouse in Lower Manhattan with an update on day 2 of the Prococo corruption trial. Also, we're going to take a look at the big picture and ask Vinny why no big-name Republicans have yet stepped in to go after Governor Cuomo, even after one of his former top aides is fighting charges, and serious ones at that.